The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystalline floors, its dome reaching heights that disappeared into artificial clouds. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, each area modified to accommodate their unique physiological needs. The floated in gaseous chambers, the crystalline collective pulsed with rhythmic light patterns, and the massive delegates cast shadows that could engulf smaller species entirely. Admiral Sarah stood alone at the center of it all, her crisp Earth Navy uniform a stark contrast to the exotic forms surrounding her. The translation matrix hummed overhead, converting thousands of languages into comprehensible meaning, but the message being delivered needed no translation. The hatred in the chamber was universal. Chancellor of the Hegemony rose from his platform, his 6 arms gesticulating as his voice boomed through the chamber. The evidence is overwhelming. Humanity's expansion into 17 sectors, their aggressive colonization policies, and their refusal to acknowledge proper galactic law makes them a threat to civilized space. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The delegation's bioluminescent patterns flashed in synchronized approval. Even the usually neutral observers shifted their mechanical forms in what passed for nodding among their kind. In the past 50 years, Chancellor continued, humans have established colonies faster than any species in recorded history. They terraform worlds without regard for indigenous ecosystems. They mine asteroid belts clean, leaving nothing for future generations. They expand their military presence under the guise of protection, but we all know their true intentions. Admiral's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. The rules of the council were clear. She would have her chance to respond, but only after all accusations were heard. Ambassador Eth of the Sylvan Collective stood next, her tree-like form swaying as she spoke. The humans show no respect for the natural order. On 442b, they destroyed a forest that had grown for 10,000 years to build one of their industrial complexes. When we protested, they claimed it was necessary for progress. This is not the behavior of a civilized species. The accusations continued for hours. The robotic consortium presented data showing human expansion rates. The aquatic depth dwellers described pollution in shared water worlds. The energy beings of the Corona Syndicate complained about human interference with stellar engineering projects. Each testimony painted humanity as aggressive, destructive, and fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. Admiral listened to every word, her expression carefully neutral despite the growing fire in her chest. She had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years, rising through ranks during humanity's first tentative steps into galactic society. She had seen the wonder in young colonists' eyes as they set foot on new worlds. She had watched human scientists work alongside alien researchers to cure diseases that had plagued multiple species. She had witnessed acts of heroism and sacrifice that would have made angels weep. But none of that seemed to matter now. When the final accusation was read, Chancellor's voice took on a ceremonial tone. The Galactic Council has deliberated on this matter for 3 cycles. The evidence is clear, the threat is real, and the decision is unanimous among all 46 non-human members. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Humanity is hereby banished from galactic civilization. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned within 1 standard year. All humans currently within Council space must return to Earth or face prosecution as outlaws. All trade agreements, scientific exchanges, and diplomatic relations are hereby terminated. The chamber erupted in approval. Delegates from dozens of species voiced their satisfaction in clicks, roars, harmonic tones, and electronic pulses. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, and utterly alien to human ears. Admiral finally stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos with remarkable clarity. "May I address the Council?" The din slowly faded as Chancellor gestured for silence. "You may speak, Admiral, though the decision has already been made." Looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and completely devoid of the anger that burned within her. "Honored delegates, I have listened to your accusations, and I understand your concerns. Humanity's expansion has been rapid, perhaps too rapid for some to feel comfortable with. Our methods have been direct, our goals ambitious, and our approach sometimes unconventional." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "But I would ask you to consider what you are truly voting for today. You speak of humanity as a threat, but have we ever fired the first shot in any conflict? You mention our military expansion, but how many of your worlds have we protected from raiders and pirates? You complain about our industrial development, but how many of your species now benefit from technologies we freely shared? Ambassador Eth's branches rustled with agitation. Your words are meaningless now, human. The vote has been cast. Indeed it has, Admiral agreed. And humanity will comply with the Council's decision. We will withdraw from all colonies beyond our home system. We will cease all trade and diplomatic relations. We will respect the sovereignty of Council space and make no attempt to interfere with your affairs. The statement seemed to satisfy many delegates, but something in its tone made others uneasy. There was no pleading in her voice, no desperation or fear. She spoke with the calm certainty of someone making a promise rather than accepting defeat. However, continued, I hope the Council understands that this decision will have consequences beyond the simple removal of human presence from your space. We have been contributors to galactic civilization for 50 years. Our scientists, our engineers, our explorers, our protectors, they have all played a role in maintaining the peace and prosperity you now enjoy. When we leave, we take that contribution with us. Chancellor's mandibles clicked dismissively. The galaxy managed quite well for millions of years before humanity arrived, Admiral. I believe we will manage again. Perhaps, said simply, time will tell. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at the assembly. There is one more thing the Council should know. Humanity has always believed in the principle of peaceful coexistence. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, allies, and partners in building a better future for all sentient life. Today, you have made it clear that such partnerships are not welcome. We will remember that lesson. As Admiral's footsteps echoed through the chamber, a strange silence fell over the assembly. Something in her final words had carried a weight that many delegates couldn't quite identify. It wasn't a threat. Humans rarely made direct threats. It was something far more unsettling, a promise that the galaxy had fundamentally changed, and not necessarily for the better. The formal vote was a mere formality. 46 species voted to banish humanity from galactic civilization. One species was notably absent from the tally. Within hours, the news reached Earth through quantum communication networks. The reaction was swift and unprecedented in human history. Every government, every corporation, every colony, and every citizen received the same message: come home. Now. The Great Withdrawal began immediately. Human ships appeared at colony worlds across 17 sectors, loading everything that could be moved and destroying what couldn't. Orbital stations were stripped of technology and abandoned. Research facilities were evacuated after crucial data was downloaded and stored. Industrial complexes were shut down, their machinery either shipped home or reduced to scrap metal. The aliens watched this process with satisfaction at first. The humans were complying exactly as ordered, showing proper respect for Council authority. But as days turned to weeks, uneasiness began to spread among the galactic community. The humans weren't just leaving, they were taking everything with them. Every piece of technology they had shared, every innovation they had contributed, every scientific advancement they had made freely available to other species was being methodically removed or destroyed. Patents were revoked, licensing agreements terminated, and technological partnerships dissolved overnight. On the industrial world of 442b, the massive fusion reactors that had powered 3 continents went dark. The human technicians who maintained them had gone home, taking their expertise and their technology with them. The Sylvan Collective had celebrated the removal of human presence from their sacred forests, but they hadn't considered who would provide the energy their growing civilization required. In the nebula, the navigation beacons that guided ships through the treacherous gas clouds went silent. Humans had installed and maintained the beacon network for 20 years, charging minimal fees for a service that kept thousands of ships safe every day. Now the beacons drifted dark and dead, and ships began disappearing in the cosmic storms. The medical stations orbiting plague worlds throughout Council space received termination notices. Human-trained doctors and human-designed equipment had been fighting diseases and saving lives for decades. Now those doctors were heading home, and the equipment was being recalled for patent violations. Most disturbing of all were the defense contractors. Human military advisors, human weapon systems, and human-trained security forces were pulling out of conflict zones across the galaxy. Pirates and raiders who had been kept in check by human-backed peacekeeping forces suddenly found themselves facing much easier targets. Chancellor tried to maintain confidence as reports flooded in from across Council space. "These are temporary disruptions," he announced to his staff. "Other species will fill the gaps left by human withdrawal. We have managed without them before." But his chief advisor, a brilliant crystalline collective entity named Prism, wasn't convinced. "Chancellor, the economic analysis suggests that human technological contributions were far more extensive than we realized. They weren't just participating in galactic civilization. In many ways, they were supporting it. Their removal is causing cascade failures across multiple sectors." "Then we will adapt," declared. "We cannot allow economic considerations to override the fundamental security of Council space." Meanwhile, on Earth, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. The leaders of every nation, every corporation, and every major institution had gathered in Geneva. Unlike the grandiose spectacle of the Galactic Council, this meeting was held in a simple conference room with basic chairs and tables. No translation matrices were needed. Everyone spoke the same language, shared the same heritage, and faced the same future. President Martinez of the United Earth Federation stood at the head of the table, her expression grim. "Ladies, and we all know why we're here. The galaxy has made its position clear. Humanity is not welcome among the stars." "The evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Admiral, who had returned from the Council chambers just hours earlier. "Every human citizen in Council space will be back within Earth system within 6 months. All our technology, all our resources, all our knowledge, it's coming home with us." "And then what?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Stone, head of the Terran Science Consortium. "We just give up, abandon everything we've worked for over the past 50 years. "Not abandon," said a new voice from the back of the room. All eyes turned to see an elderly man in a simple black suit. Professor James Harrison had been humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy, the man who had made first contact with the hegemony over half a century ago. "Evolve." He stepped forward, his presence commanding attention despite his advanced age. "I've spent my entire adult life believing that cooperation and integration were the keys to humanity's future among the stars. Today, I learned that I was wrong. The galaxy doesn't want partners, it wants subjects. It doesn't want innovation, it wants stability. It doesn't want growth, it wants stagnation." President Martinez leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Professor?" Harrison's eyes held a gleam that hadn't been there in decades. "I'm suggesting that we give the galaxy exactly what it asked for: complete separation, total independence. And when they come begging for our help, and they will, we'll be ready to negotiate from a position of strength rather than supplication." The room fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. Admiral was the first to speak. "You're talking about more than just isolation. You're talking about making ourselves indispensable and then making them come to us." "Precisely," Harrison replied. "For 50 years we've been trying to fit into their civilization. Now it's time to build our own." Over the following weeks, the plan took shape. Humanity would not simply withdraw from galactic space. They would accelerate their development in isolation, pushing the boundaries of science and technology without the constraints of Council regulations or alien sensibilities. Earth would become not just a world, but the center of a new kind of civilization based on human values, innovation, adaptation, and the relentless pursuit of improvement. The best and minds of humanity were recalled from across the galaxy. Scientists who had been working on joint research projects brought their knowledge home. Engineers who had been building infrastructure for alien worlds turned their skills toward human advancement. Soldiers who had been keeping peace in Council space prepared for a very different kind of future. As the last human ships departed Council space, they left behind a galaxy that was already beginning to feel their absence. The grand experiment of galactic civilization had voted to remove its most dynamic component. Soon, they would discover whether they could survive the consequences of that choice. 5 years had passed since humanity's withdrawal from galactic space, and the Sol system had become unrecognizable. What had once been a single inhabited world, surrounded by research stations and mining operations, had transformed into a bustling hub of technological marvels that would have been considered impossible just decades earlier. Dr. Elizabeth Stone stood on the observation deck of Luna Prime, watching as massive construction fleets assembled the addition to Earth's growing fleet. The ship stretched over 15 kilometers in length, its hull composed of materials that didn't exist in any galactic database. Quantum-fold drives hummed with contained energy that could bend space-time itself, while defensive systems bristled with weaponry based on principles that human scientists had developed in complete isolation. "The Prometheus class is ready for final testing," reported her assistant, Doctor, as she approached with a data tablet. "All 20 ships in the first batch have passed preliminary trials. The breakthrough in quantum tunneling technology has exceeded all projections." Stone nodded, her eyes still fixed on the magnificent vessel before them. "Professor Harrison's vision is becoming reality faster than any of us imagined. 5 years ago, we were refugees in our own solar system. Now we're building ships that could cross the galaxy in months rather than years." The transformation hadn't been limited to spacecraft. Earth itself had a revolution that touched every aspect of human civilization. Massive orbital rings now surrounded the planet, housing billions of people in self-contained ecosystems that recycled everything with perfect efficiency. The moon had been honeycombed with manufacturing facilities that operated on scales that boggled the mind. Mars hosted experimental colonies where humans tested adaptation technologies that would allow them to survive in any environment. But perhaps most impressive were the deep space installations. Hidden beyond the orbit of Pluto, massive research stations conducted experiments that pushed the boundaries of physics, chemistry, and biology. Without the ethical constraints imposed by alien species or the regulatory framework of the Galactic Council, human scientists had achieved breakthroughs that seemed like magic to outside observers. The quantum communication network that had once connected human colonies to galactic civilization had been repurposed into something far more sophisticated. Now it served as the backbone for a new kind of society, one where every human, regardless of their location in the solar system, remained connected to the collective knowledge and experience of their species. "Any word from the monitoring stations?" Stone asked as they walked through the corridors of Luna Prime. Doctor consulted her tablet. "The long-range sensors are picking up increased activity in former Council space, ships moving in patterns that suggest supply shortages and infrastructure failures. The nebula traffic has decreased by 70% over the past 6 months. Several systems that relied on our technology are showing signs of economic collapse." Stone wasn't surprised. Humanity had been far more integrated into galactic civilization than most species realized. Their sudden withdrawal had created gaps that alien technology couldn't easily fill. Human engineering had been more efficient, human medicine more effective, and human innovation more rapid than anything the galaxy had seen before. "Any attempts at contact?" Stone asked. 17 different species have sent diplomatic messages requesting clarification of trade status," reported. "All have been politely declined per the Council's decision. However, there have been some unusual developments." They entered Stone's laboratory, a vast space filled with equipment that combined human innovation with principles learned from decades of alien contact. Holographic displays showed star maps, experimental data, and communication intercepts from across known space. "Show me," Stone said, settling into her chair. Activated a holographic projector that filled the air with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas of conflict, yellow zones indicated economic instability, and green zones showed normal activity. The amount of red had increased dramatically over the past year. "The outer rim territories have become essentially lawless," explained. "Without human peacekeeping forces and defensive technology, pirate raids have increased by 400%. The hegemony is struggling to maintain order with their own forces, which were never designed for rapid response operations." She highlighted several star systems on the map. 3 plague outbreaks have occurred in systems that relied on human medical technology. The Crystalline Collective has requested emergency medical assistance twice, but the Council has maintained the ban on human contact. Current estimates suggest that over 2 million sentient beings have died from diseases that human medicine could have prevented. Stone studied the data with growing concern. She had never wanted the galaxy to suffer for their decision to banish humanity. The goal had been independence, not revenge, but the practical consequences of technological dependence were becoming impossible to ignore. "The is particularly interesting," continued. "Their primary food production facilities relied on human agricultural technology, Without maintenance and spare parts, their food output has dropped by 40%. They're facing famine conditions for the first time in recorded history. A new voice interrupted their discussion. The question is whether we do anything about it. Both women turned to see Admiral entering the laboratory. She had aged considerably over the past 5 years, but her bearing remained as sharp as ever. As head of Earth's newly independent military forces, she had overseen the development of defense capabilities that far exceeded anything humanity had possessed during their time in the galaxy. "Admiral," Stone said, rising from her chair, "I didn't realize you were on Luna Prime." "Emergency Council meeting," replied grimly. "We've received a priority transmission that changes everything." She activated a secure communication channel, and the laboratory's speakers filled with a familiar voice speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. It was Chancellor, though he sounded far different than he had 5 years earlier. Gone was the arrogant confidence, replaced by something that approached desperation. "Attention Earth Defense Command," the message began. "This is Chancellor of the Galactic Council. I am transmitting on emergency frequencies with an urgent request for humanitarian assistance. The Devourers have returned." Stone felt her blood run cold. Every human who had spent time in galactic space knew about the Devourers. They were ancient machines from outside the galaxy, remnants of a civilization that had died out millions of years ago. They consumed entire star systems, converting matter and energy into more machines to continue their endless expansion. The last major incursion had been over 1,000 years ago, requiring the combined efforts of every known species to drive them back into the void. His message continued. "3 systems in the outer spiral have already been consumed. Our traditional defensive strategies have proven ineffective against their upgraded technology. Conservative estimates suggest that without intervention, they will consume the entire galactic rim within 1 standard year and reach core worlds within 5 years. The transmission paused, and when spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute defeat. "The Galactic Council formally requests humanitarian assistance from humanity in accordance with the Universal Sentient Rights Declaration. We understand that our previous decision to banish your species from Council space may complicate this request, but the survival of galactic civilization is at stake." The message ended, leaving the laboratory in complete silence. Stone and stared at each other while Admiral stood with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "How bad is it really?" Stone finally asked. Activated her own data display, showing real-time intelligence gathered by humanity's advanced sensor networks. The images were devastating. Entire star systems had been reduced to clouds of metallic debris. Massive swarms of machine creatures moved through space like schools of mechanical fish, consuming everything in their path. "Worse than admits," said. "Our deep space monitoring stations detected the Devourer ships 6 months ago. They've been upgraded significantly since the last incursion. New materials, new energy weapons, new adaptive protocols. The traditional galactic defense grid couldn't stop them even if it was functioning at full capacity." Doctor pulled up historical data on her tablet. The last time the Devourers attacked, it took a coordinated response from 47 species using their most advanced technology. The defensive effort lasted 3 years and resulted in massive casualties, and that was when the galaxy was at peak unity and technological development. Now they're facing the same threat with reduced technological capabilities, fractured command structures, and massive infrastructure gaps, Stone added, because they decided they didn't need humanity anymore. Admiral nodded grimly. "The irony is that our new technology gives us the best chance of stopping them. The quantum fold drives allow for rapid deployment across galactic distances. Our new weapons systems are designed to adapt to unknown threats, and our manufacturing capabilities could produce defensive equipment on the scale needed to mount an effective resistance." "So what do we do?" asked. "Do we help them despite their treatment of us, or do we let them face the consequences of their own decisions?" Stone walked to the observation window, looking out at the busy construction yards of Luna Prime. Hundreds of ships were under construction, representing technological capabilities that exceeded anything in galactic space. Humanity had spent 5 years building themselves into a force that could stand independently among the stars. Now they faced the question of what to do with that power. "There's a third option," she said finally. "We help them, but we do it on our terms." Admiral raised an eyebrow. "Explain." The galaxy voted to banish us because they saw us as a threat to their established order, Stone said, turning back to face her colleagues. They were right. We are a threat to the old ways of doing things. We innovate too fast, expand too quickly, and change too much for their comfort. But right now, being a threat to the old order is exactly what they need. She gestured to the star maps showing the Devourer advance. They can't stop this threat using traditional methods. They need something new, something revolutionary, something that breaks all their rules about how wars are fought and technology is deployed. They need humanity. You're suggesting we rescue them in exchange for what? Asked. Recognition, Stone replied. Not as supplicants seeking membership in their civilization, but as equals offering partnership. We don't return to the galaxy as the humans who were banished 5 years ago. We return as the humans who have become something greater during our isolation. The plan that emerged from that meeting would reshape the galaxy forever. Humanity would answer the call for help, but they would do so as liberators rather than servants. They would save galactic civilization from the Devourers, and in the process, they would demonstrate that the future belonged to those willing to embrace change rather than fear it. Within hours, the greatest fleet in human history began to assemble. Ships that had never been seen outside the Sol system prepared for their first journey into galactic space. Technology that had been developed in complete secrecy itself for its first real test. And humanity prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson about the consequences of underestimating those who refuse to be limited by others' expectations. The Devourers had returned, but they would face an enemy that hadn't existed during their last incursion. They would face humanity unleashed, unrestricted, and utterly committed to protecting the innocent regardless of politics or past grievances. The galaxy had voted to banish Earth 5 years ago. Now Earth was coming back not as supplicants but as saviors, and this time they would write the rules. The human fleet materialized at the edge of the sector like ghosts becoming solid, their quantum-fold drives bending space-time in ways that no galactic species had thought possible. 200 ships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with unknown materials and bristling with weapons that pulsed with contained energy. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching as her tactical displays populated with data from the most advanced sensor suite ever built. The Devourer swarm was exactly where intelligence had predicted, a writhing mass of mechanical creatures consuming the remnants of what had once been a thriving star system. All ships report ready status, announced Commander Torres from the communications station. Quantum-fold drives are holding stable, adaptive weapon systems are online, and defensive fields are at maximum efficiency. Nodded, studying the tactical situation with the calm focus of someone who had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. The Devourers had evolved since their last incursion, just as intelligence suggested. Their ships were larger, their formations more sophisticated, and their adaptive protocols more aggressive. But they had never faced humanity's new technological capabilities. Commence Operation Sunrise, she ordered. All ships engage Pattern Delta 7. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory, we're fighting to make a statement. The human fleet moved with precision that bordered on the supernatural. Ships that had been separated by light years of space moments earlier now coordinated their attacks with microsecond timing. Quantum-fold technology allowed them to appear anywhere on the battlefield instantaneously, striking at weak points and disappearing before the Devourers could respond. The first salvo of human weapons lit up space with energies that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Plasma streams that could adapt their frequency in real time to penetrate any defense. Gravity weapons that could create localized black holes to consume enemy formations. Quantum disruptors that could phase entire ships out of existence. But the most impressive aspect of the human attack wasn't the weapons themselves. It was the coordination. 200 ships moved as if controlled by a single mind, each vessel anticipating the movements of its companions and the enemy with uncanny precision. The quantum communication network that linked all human forces allowed for real-time tactical adaptation that made their fleet function like a single, vast organism. The Devourers responded with their characteristic adaptive efficiency. Their formation shifted to counter human tactics, their weapons modified to match the frequencies of human defensive systems, and their numbers increased as more swarms converged on the battle site. But for the first time in recorded galactic history, Their adaptation wasn't fast enough. "Enemy formation compromised," reported the tactical officer. "Devourer swarm efficiency down 30% and falling. They can't adapt to our quantum fold tactics." Admiral allowed herself a small smile. The quantum fold drives weren't just faster than traditional faster-than-light travel. They operated on entirely different principles. The Devourers could analyze and counter any technology they encountered, but they needed to encounter it first. Human ships could attack from multiple dimensions simultaneously, making traditional defensive adaptations impossible. "Continue the assault," ordered. "But remember, this is about more than just destroying Devourers. Every alien sensor in this sector is watching us. Make sure they understand what humanity has become." As the battle continued, observers throughout the galaxy watched in stunned amazement. The Galactic Council's Emergency Command Center fell silent as their displays showed impossible tactical maneuvers and weapon effects that known physics. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating technological superiority that exceeded anything in the galactic database. "How are they moving like that?" demanded Chancellor, his 6 arms gesticulating frantically as he stared at the tactical displays. "No ship can fold space that quickly or that precisely." His chief science advisor, a brilliant crystalline collective entity named Prism, pulsed with confused light patterns. "Chancellor, they appear to have developed quantum fold technology that operates on principles we don't recognize. Their tactical coordination suggests real-time communication across galactic distances. And their weapons are adapting faster than our sensors can analyze them." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral received a priority communication from Earth. The face of President Martinez appeared on the main screen, her expression serious but satisfied. "Admiral, the galactic observation networks are going crazy. Every major power is demanding explanations for our technological capabilities. Several species are already requesting formal diplomatic contact." "As expected," replied. "What are our instructions?" "Complete the mission first," Martinez said firmly. "Destroy every devourer in the sector. Make it clear that this threat is being handled by humanity alone. Then we'll discuss terms with the galaxy." The battle reached its climax as the main Devourer command ship, a massive construct the size of a small moon, attempted to escape into deep space. The creature had analyzed enough of the human attack patterns to realize that traditional defensive measures were useless. Its only hope was retreat. But the humans had anticipated this strategy. A full squadron of ships quantum-folded directly into the command ship's path, their combined firepower creating a gravitational cascade that trapped the massive creature in a localized space-time distortion. For 30 seconds, the most advanced creation of an ancient machine civilization struggled against the physics-defying power of human technology. Then it simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to pure energy that briefly the local star. The remaining Devourer swarms, suddenly deprived of their command structure, fell into chaos. Individual units continued to fight with mechanical persistence, but their coordination collapsed entirely. Human ships methodically hunted down the survivors, their quantum fold capabilities allowing them to appear anywhere the creatures tried to hide. Within 6 hours of the engagement beginning, the sector was clear of Devourer presence. Not a single human ship had been destroyed, and casualties were limited to minor injuries from system overloads during high-intensity maneuvers. As the human fleet regrouped, Admiral opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council's Emergency Command Center. Her image appeared on screens throughout Council space, and her words were broadcast to billions of beings across the galaxy. "Chancellor, this is Admiral of the Earth Defense Force. The Devourer incursion in the sector has been eliminated. All hostile contacts have been destroyed or driven beyond galactic borders. The threat to Council space has been neutralized." The silence that followed was deafening. In the Council chambers, delegates from dozens of species stared at their displays in shock. A threat that had required the combined efforts of the entire galaxy to defeat 1,000 years ago had been destroyed by humanity alone in a matter of hours. Finally found his voice. "Admiral, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must express our profound gratitude for your assistance. The debt owed to humanity for this service cannot be calculated." "No debt is owed," replied calmly. "This was a humanitarian mission undertaken to protect innocent life. Humanity has no desire for gratitude or payment from the Council. Then, what do you want? Asked, though he clearly dreaded the answer. Admiral's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes suggested depths of purpose that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The galaxy voted to banish Earth because you saw us as a threat to the established order. You were correct. We are a threat to stagnation, to fear of change, and to the belief that improvement is dangerous. But we are not a threat to innocent life or to species that seek genuine cooperation. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. Humanity will be establishing a permanent presence in galactic space. We will protect any world that asks for our aid, trade with any species that desires our friendship, and share our knowledge with those willing to contribute to mutual advancement. We make this offer not as supplicants seeking membership in your civilization, but as an independent power offering partnership to those wise enough to accept it. The implications were staggering. Humanity was announcing their return to galactic space not as reformed exiles, but as a superpower that would operate according to their own rules and values. The technological demonstration they had just provided made it clear that opposing such a decision would be both futile and disastrous. Over the following weeks, the response from galactic civilization was both predictable and surprising. Several species immediately requested formal diplomatic relations with humanity, eager to gain access to the technological marvels they had witnessed. They sent desperate pleas for assistance with their failing agricultural systems. The nebula colonies begged for new navigation beacons to replace the ones that had failed after human withdrawal. But the most significant response came from individual worlds rather than governments. Planets throughout Council space began transmitting direct requests for human protection, trade agreements, and technological assistance. The established order that had voted to banish humanity found itself competing with the very power they had tried to exclude. Chancellor attempted to maintain Council authority by issuing statements about unauthorized human presence and violations of galactic law, but his words carried little weight. The species that had once supported humanity's banishment now faced a choice between pride and survival, between political consistency and practical benefits. The choice became easier as reports filtered in from beyond the galactic rim. The Devourers hadn't been completely eliminated. Their main forces still lurked in the dark spaces between galaxies, and they would return eventually. When they did, only one power had proven capable of stopping them. 6 months after the Battle of Sector, a transformed Galactic Council convened for an emergency session. The chamber looked much the same as it had 5 years earlier, but the political landscape had changed fundamentally. Humanity now maintained orbital installations throughout Council space. Their ships patrolled shipping lanes that had been plagued by piracy, and their technology was spreading to any world willing to embrace innovation over tradition. Admiral once again stood at the center of the chamber, but this time she wasn't alone. Delegates from 17 species stood with her, representing worlds that had chosen to align themselves with humanity rather than the traditional council structure. The old order was fracturing, replaced by something more dynamic and far more effective. Honored delegates, Chancellor began, his voice lacking the authority it had once carried. We have gathered to discuss the current situation regarding human presence in Council space and the modifications to traditional galactic governance that have resulted. Admiral stepped forward, her bearing confident but not arrogant. Chancellor, the modifications you mention are the natural result of offering genuine choice to galactic citizens. When presented with the option of stagnant bureaucracy or dynamic partnership, many worlds have chosen partnership. Humanity respects that choice and will honor our commitments to our new allies. But surely some accommodation can be reached, pleaded. Some framework that preserves council authority while incorporating human contributions. The old framework failed, replied firmly. It failed when it prioritized political stability over technological advancement. It failed when it chose fear over hope. And it failed catastrophically when it left the galaxy defenseless against the Devourer threat. Humanity will not return to a system that values conformity over competence. She gestured to the delegates standing with her. We offer a new framework based on voluntary cooperation, mutual benefit, and the shared goal of protecting all sentient life. Any species, any world, any individual is welcome to join this alliance, but it will be an alliance of equals, not subjects and masters. The debate that followed lasted for days, but the outcome was inevitable. The old Galactic Council would continue to exist, governing those species and worlds that preferred traditional stability. But a new alliance was forming around humanity's vision of dynamic cooperation and technological advancement. The galaxy was becoming multipolar, with competing centers of power offering different approaches to civilization. As the session concluded, Admiral transmitted a final message to Earth. Mission accomplished, Mr. President. The galaxy learned that banishing humanity was a mistake. Now they're learning that the mistake can't simply be reversed. We're not the same species that was voted out 5 years ago. We've become something stronger, something better, and something that won't be dismissed again. The response from President Martinez was immediate and satisfied. Understood, Admiral. Welcome to the new galactic order, one where humanity sets the terms. In the years that followed, historians would mark the Battle of Sector as the moment when galactic civilization fundamentally changed. The old order based on fear of change gave way to a new paradigm that embraced innovation and adaptation. Humanity's exile had forced them to evolve beyond the limitations that galactic society had tried to impose, and their return transformed everything. The galaxy had voted to banish Earth, hoping to maintain their comfortable status. Instead, they had created the very thing they feared most, a power that answered to no authority but its own conscience and was limited by nothing but the boundaries of possibility itself. Humanity had taken their second warning and used it to become something the galaxy had never seen before. They had become truly free,